Yep, it's that time again. Welcome back to another edition of PK's PSA, coming to you directly from the office of Pastor Ken here in beautiful Ottawa, Ohio, and New Creation Lutheran Church. In case you haven't heard, a PSA, well, that's a pastoral service announcement. Trying a little bit to hone in on what we're all going through and enduring as we live through these days under the cloud of this pandemic called COVID-19 or the coronavirus, a public health threat. Well, today's Saturday, March 21st, 2020. You can look at the calendar right there behind me. And if you're counting, this is actually our fifth offering of this here pastoral service announcement. Each of our broadcasts also concludes with a devotional moment we've called, "And Now a Word from Our Scriptures." You could say we're coming at you from two different directions. The first, to your head, to help keep you informed as we try to find our way through this crazy and unsettling time and mitigate the spread of this virus in this country and, heck, around the world. A lot of really smart people are doing all they can to help, and by golly, we're going to do our part too. As we heed all their recommendations along with their mandates, hopefully it's all adding up to making a difference. Now, it may not seem like much, but perhaps it's like voting. It's only one vote, but in the end, it counts. And the sum total of all those votes in favor of doing the right thing is what makes for an eventual victory. So now, how about another pastoral service announcement? You know, for the longest time, I was familiar with a subject in school called social studies. I have a wife and a son. They both have a degree in social work. As a pastor, I try to stay well informed of all the social services in and around our community and our county. I have a DVD in my collection telling the story of how Facebook got started. It's entitled The Social Network. With that, who isn't aware of the impact of social media? In a couple of years, I'll be eligible for Social Security. And there's a candidate running for President of the United States. Seems to be a staunch advocate of socialism. Well, these days, however, we're all becoming acutely aware of an essentially new phenomenon called social distancing. It's about reducing contact with large groups of people and just people from other people, no matter the size. The medical experts are recommending we distance ourselves from one another at this time. Go figure. Well, if you do, go figure it being about 6 feet or about 2 meters. That's how far we're supposed to stay separated. With that, how about we now go just the distance of 1 foot? That's the distance from our head to our heart as we shift to our devotional moment called, "And Now a Word from Our Scriptures." And speaking of distancing, maybe that writer of the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes had a pretty good idea of the possibilities with regard to, seasons. Spring is in the air, you know. Just yesterday, as a matter of fact. And maybe you've heard of Ecclesiastes, but then maybe not. Maybe, however, you might be old enough to remember hearing of that British rhythm and blues band back in the 1960s. You could say, they were for the birds. No, actually, they were the birds. Now that's just a little bit funny. That group sort of plagiarized Ecclesiastes in their hit song, "Turn, Turn, Turn." Well, enough about them. It's Ecclesiastes 3 I want to draw your attention to. And there we read this: "For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die." You go down a verse or two, and our inspired writer seems to almost be alluding to the current state of affairs. In verse 5, here's what he penned: "A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing." Now how about them apples? Ain't it the truth? As we wish we could all give each other a handshake or a hug, we're being called upon to employ social distancing. Or as Ecclesiastes said, refrain from embracing. 'Tis the season. I remember Jesus once was in a large group of people, large crowd actually, and many of them They simply wanted to touch him. And a woman who'd been suffering from hemorrhages touched just the hem of Jesus' cloak and was immediately, miraculously healed. In spite of all this, we should be reminded that Jesus will never leave us or forsake us, no matter what. So, until next time, stay faithful, my friends. And remember, fear not tomorrow. God's already there. Thanks for listening, and God be with you always.